When did Sabena, when did they went bankrupt?
2001, shortly after 9/11.
Okay, 2001. Okay, and did you see like 2001. Okay, that's really quite a long time ago. Okay, yeah. That's what I thought. I thought it was.
I worked there at the time, and Brussels Airport was number 10 in Europe. If you look at number of movements, number of passengers, and Sabena, you can say a lot about things. It was mismanaged and all of that, but they had a good network, east, west, north, south, and certainly after bankruptcy, this all falls down, and some other foreign carriers take over. And then after a while, the successor was there, but it takes years and years to recover. And I think we never recovered.
There are some examples, I think, like Budapest or Barcelona, where low-cost carriers have quickly filled the gap. But this apparently didn't happen in Brussels. Why not?
Not in Brussels, in Charleroi. We have in Belgium a low-cost airport, which was the first continental base of Ryanair. So Ryanair jumped in that gap a few years later from Charleroi, which is like 40 kilometers from Brussels. And Charleroi Airport is called Brussels South Airport.
Oh, I see. So then there was actually there is some airport competition here, right? Because Charleroi basically took the low-cost carrier business, and then I guess other low-cost carriers such as EasyJet or Wizz Air may be reluctant to opening routes to Brussels, because then they would be competing quite substantially with Ryanair, and they may be wondering about how they would be responding to this, maybe aggressively. Is this something that makes sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. But you're right. Normally the low-cost carriers fill the gap. You saw that with ITA as well, no? Alitalia shrunk, and then Ryanair and EasyJet and Wizz Air jumped into that gap.
But how is the capacity of Brussels Airport? So is perhaps Brussels Airport, do they have plenty of capacity, or are they slot controlled and it's hard to get slots, especially during peak hours? How is the situation in Brussels right now?
No, it's of course it is slot controlled, and there's some moments it's more complicated to get a slot, but the airport has three runways.
Three runways.
It's as big as Heathrow, so it has a huge additional capacity. Of course, for the environmental permits, there's now a cap, but that cap hasn't been reached yet. So that's definitely not the issue.
Okay, so what we observe basically is Sabena went bankrupt, and if I understand correctly, what you said is at the time Sabena was still around. They went bankrupt in 2001, as you just mentioned to me. Then the airport was actually quite relatively big compared to other European airports. But then other European airports sort of took over and grew much faster than Brussels Airport. And what you're saying is basically this is the lack of having a national. Do you think it's important that it's a national a network carrier, or would it?
Yeah, it was the Belgian network carrier. By the way, in 2000, Brussels Airport had 50% more movements than it had now.
Really?
Passengers is more or less the same now after 25 years, but the number of movements is still 1/3 less compared to then. Which of course means that your connectivity, your feeding for the long haul routes, they flew to Bristol, Billund, and all this secondary and tertiary airports. So the connectivity of Belgium was much better then than it is now. And if you lose your hub carrier, you lose lots of feeding traffic in the morning and the evening, which can also be used as a point-to-point traffic. And that was a bit the point I am making, that it doesn't make any sense to tax the transfer passengers because you're making it your hub carrier difficult. You really punish your hub carrier.
I still want to understand, why is it that Brussels, for such a long time, Brussels Airline, which belongs to the Lufthansa Group, right? They, of course, operate from Brussels Air. I guess they are Brussels Airlines, so they should have they're based in Brussels, I guess. So how big are they? And would you qualify them as a network carrier? I guess they are more like a regional carrier.
It's a network carrier. They focus on Africa. Historically, Belgians, we are bilingual, Dutch and French. We have a history in Africa with Rwanda, Burundi, Congo. So historically, Sabena always focused on Africa. So Lufthansa Group kept that as a center of excellence. In addition, Brussels is the capital of Europe, with people with a high income. And Belgium is squeezed between the Air France KLM alliance as well. So it's strategically very important for Lufthansa Group to have, let's say, the Belgians on board of their frequent flyer program. And if I fly to Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever, I'm always connecting through Frankfurt and Munich. So Lufthansa uses Brussels Airlines as well as a feeder for their intercontinental network.
But it seems that the Brussels airline is not really a proper replacement for Sabena, because Sabena was still stronger, if relatively speaking.
It was bigger. I mean, stronger. It was financially definitely not stronger, but was bigger. Much bigger. If you look at the long haul aircraft, of course you have to look back at the time, now we hardly have any connections to the east. We don't have, for instance, Brussels Boston, which is an important route. We don't have Brussels LA, which is an important route. We used to have all these routes, and now we fly to Africa. You can fly to, I think, 20 African destinations, which is nice. But of course, these are not Belgians flying there. This is mainly connectivity.
So I think there is another factor that I think plays a role. And this is, first of all, you said you're squeezed from the KLM, Air France KLM group, basically Paris and Schiphol Airport. But I think there's another issue, which is the high-speed rail, right? So it's pretty easy to get to those places because of the basically high-speed rail network. So that adds, further reduces the need to have so many hub airports in that region, basically.
It's a chicken egg discussion. Of course, we have excellent connectivity with Schiphol. From Antwerp, we have 10 trains a day. From Brussels South Railway Station, we have 10 trains a day to Charles de Gaulle. So it's you can even check in Brussels South with your luggage and connect to Paris. But this is indirect connectivity. That's not direct connectivity. So our indirect connectivity as a country is good, but we always have to transfer.
Right. So for you travel a lot. This is kind of annoying. You would rather have the possibility to fly from Brussels to the places where you want to travel directly, rather than having to go to Paris or to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam.
If I lived in Amsterdam, I could travel the whole world. It's a bit like Dubai. Dubai is even better. But if you live in Amsterdam, you have a huge range. If you don't look at prices, because pricing is another discussion. But if you really want to fly direct, which I normally like to do, it's more expensive, of course, and so on. The whole reasoning behind it. From Brussels, there's hardly any intercontinental destination you can do. And if you can fly to Tokyo, yes, 3 times a week.
Yeah,
you can fly to Singapore, yes, 3 times a week, and this is basically the only Asian destinations which we have for the moment. And 3 times a week it's nothing, no?